All right, what's going on, guys? So this is the first video to what I'm going to call a boot camp. It's a few video series, so I'm going to make about 6 videos. This is just the introduction, and it's just going to go over a lot of core psychological tips and habits and things that you need to be aware of and get good at in order to actually become profitable. I'm going to be completely honest, I am not profitable at all right now. However, I do see that I am going to be profitable, right? Because it really is all a mindset. And when you get into trading, you see people say that it's 95% psychology and like 5% trading. And you don't really comprehend that. You understand it to a degree, you're like, okay, I get it. But, once you get into trading for a while, you realize like it really is all psychology and preventing bad habits and making sure that you can have consistent actions and reactions to the same situation. And that's why I think it's so important. Okay, so these are things that I am currently trying to install into my life, into my habits, into my day-to-day routine with trading. So I'm not going to sit here and act like a professional, but I do feel like I have a lot of knowledge to give to people because I've come a long way studying my own mind and really just learning how these profitable traders think and how I can adopt that as well. Okay, so first, I'm just going to go over all of the things that we're going to go over in all the other videos. So the first video is just going to be on emotional control. That's one of the biggest ones, but these are all very important topics. Emotional control, discipline. Didn't spell that right. That's okay. I'm going to leave that there. Discipline. Then we have risk management. We have fear. Let's just keep it consistent here, huh? Sorry. Yeah, this is better. Fear. Okay, whatever. Since I'm here, I'll correct this. Jeez, you don't have to be smart to be a trader, that's for sure. And then the last one is tilt. So these things are all things that you need to be able to understand how you react and how you deal with these different segment of emotions. Okay? And obviously everything here is worth going into for at least 10 to 15 to maybe 20 minutes. And if you don't have any of these locked down, then you're not going to be able to become consistent. It's just that simple, right? For example, I had a day recently where I ended up losing, and instead of just taking one simple loss, I kind of went on tilt and I took some other trades that ended up losing as well. And I hit the daily loss limit on 2 accounts. And after that, I took a step back and realized that, someone who's doing that, the person I am right now, is not currently capable of handling, 5 to 10 accounts and having them all funded and being able to request consistent payouts. Because someone who tilts, someone who isn't control of their emotions, they let their emotions make their decisions. They're not disciplined in their approach at all. They don't have that great risk management and they allow their fears to actually make decisions for them. Right? People that are susceptible to these things, they just won't be profitable. And the whole thing about being profitable, from what I understand, is that you just have to be consistent and control your behavior, right? Because you have an edge, and all of these different things here, they tamper with probability. So the thing that's easy about trading is simply entering a trade, right? I could teach like a 6-year-old how to find my setup, and after a little while, they're going to learn how to find my setup. But what makes trading so difficult is being able to execute that setup under pressure, right? Because realistically, when you get in the markets, you do get into a fight or flight situation, a fight or flight feeling, however you want to say that. You go into fight or flight mode. And that's just the reality of the situation. Everyone handles fight or flight differently. Athletes handle that much better than most people because they have the crowd watching, they understand how to zone back in when they do feel a lot of pressure. But the average person, once they feel a lot of pressure, they get into that fight or flight mode, their emotions just make decisions, way before their logical brain does. And then that leads to poor decision making, that leads to blowing accounts, that can lead to wins, but if you have, shitty wins in the sense that you just make a poor decision to get a win, then that's going to lead to bad behaviors. So becoming consistently profitable, you do need to be able to have a lot of these things in control and like I said, understand how you react emotionally. My screen's frozen. My PC sucks. Fuck. Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah. Okay. And I just feel like I have enough knowledge to the point where I've just kind of locked in on a lot of these different things to the point where I can share a lot of the information and how to master a few of these. Okay, because I'm very close to mastering all of these. I can take a loss, rub it off my back, and then just keep moving, and just execute my edge, right? And I want to make an additional video on kind of just like the science behind your brain, right? Because psychology is biology. And in that sense, you can't really control the emotions you're making because as traders, we get into the situation where we go into the markets and say, I'm not going to overtrade. I'm not going to do it. I will not take another trade if I lose. You end up losing and you find yourself taking another trade. But you just told yourself that you shouldn't take that trade, but you do it anyway. And then you get out of the markets and you're like, what the fuck just happened? How did I do that? Why did I do that? I told myself I wouldn't do it. And that's because, the emotional brain took over. And that's biology, right? That's not because of any discipline issue. That is because your biology just completely takes over your decision making by applying your emotions to it to try and protect yourself. And that's really interesting. And I think that can help a lot of people as well. And I feel like a lot of people don't really go into it in terms of, the chemistry of the brain and why we make these decisions and how we can overcome these decisions. And I think that's one of the most important parts to becoming a successful day trader, right? Because that's all it is. We can all execute a setup, we can all find our setup, but can we do it consistently under high pressure? Can we learn from our losses instead of crashing out? Can we go on a hot win streak and not get overconfident? Can we always have good risk management? Can we follow our rules to a T every single time without breaking them at all? Can we get into a situation where we completely shit the bed, we lose a little bit more than we should, and we don't go on tilt? Right? You need to be a different person in order to be successful in day trading. And, people say, oh, it's going to change you as a person. You're going to find so much about yourself when you're trading, and you really will. Because if you aren't patient, that's going to show up in the charts. If you are fearful, that's going to show up in the charts. If you are impulsive, that's going to show up in the charts, right? If you're greedy, it's going to show up in the charts. Okay, if you don't understand how to, make decisions logically when your emotional brain is trying to take over, that's going to show up in the charts. Okay, so I'm going to go on a streak right now and make a couple videos that I think is going to be very beneficial. So the last one I will add, this is going to be the best video. Psychology is biology. Understanding that when you overtrade, it's actually because your brain is trying to protect you, which is very ironic, right? But our brains aren't hooked up right in order to trade, right? You're asking your brain to voluntarily lose money, suppress the emotions of revenge, of FOMO, and all these things that humans naturally struggle with. So anyway, I'm gonna end this intro video here, but you know, I'm gonna add another video, and none of this is planned. I don't have like a script or anything. Like I'm just kind of going off the top. I'm being raw here. The last video is gonna be self-belief, because this is actually one of the most important things. You have to know in your heart that this is something that you can do, this is something that you want to achieve, and you're capable of doing that. Okay, but the sad reality is you can have self-belief, but if you don't do the work to try and get to that goal, you're just going to be running on a hamster wheel until you tire out and you know, you just fall over and that's it. You won't get back up. So you do need to have self-belief, but you need to pair it with everything else as well. So this is going to be the psychology boot camp. I think this is going to be insanely beneficial. Um, I've wanted to do this for a while now, and none of this is going to be scripted or anything like that. I might have some notes I want to talk about, but overall, um, I know like I don't have a big presence at the moment, and I'm not even profitable, but you're looking at someone who is going to be very profitable because I understand these concepts. It's that simple. So I don't think, you know, I do think that these videos are going to be worth a listen. I'm going to make them regardless, even just for myself to look back at in the future. But I do think you should tune in and, just let me know what you guys think. And yeah, we're going to go from there. All right, so this is the intro video, and then I'm going to make a couple now. All right.